Hello, my friends. So today, I kind of want to just introduce a concept that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And I learned this concept from a great researcher and thinker on YouTube here called Dr. Deep State. If you haven't seen his channel, which I doubt you've seen this channel, it only has like 250 subscribers at this time. Go check out his channel. Watch it from the beginning. You have to start with the first video. It's structured like a course, and each video follows and builds upon the last. So you have to start from the start. But it is a wild ride, and he goes through really great resources. He digs into the writings and the literature of the elites and of these key players, these key decision makers, and these influencers who have existed throughout the ages. And one of the concepts that he talks about was conceived of originally by Michel Foucault. Foucault was a French philosopher, and Foucault introduced this concept called biopolitics, which he relates intimately with another concept called biopower. And I think the best way to start thinking about biopolitics and biopower is to understand it as sort of a technique for control that governments can impose upon populations as a whole. And that this method of control is distinct from what we typically think of as the mechanics of power or the mechanics of control. So historically, the most primitive, I guess, version of exerting control or exerting power is, I think, what Foucault calls sovereign power, something along those lines. And I think the best way to sum it up is sovereign power is the power to let live and make die. So under the typical historical form of power and control, the way that this power was exerted was upon an individual, and the power was essentially used to punish an individual, or even to kill them if they disobey enough. It's a preventative. It's not preventative. It's a reactionary thing where somebody does something wrong, or something that the sovereign doesn't like, and they punish them or kill them. And this sort of power where wrongdoers are punished is sort of inverted by this new form of power called biopolitics or biopower, where instead of killing or punishing a wrongdoer, the situation is reversed, where instead of letting live and making die, the new biopower, the new biopolitics, is such that they can let die and make live. And that this is a monumental change in how control is exerted. To put it in sort of a concrete, I know that's very theoretical and abstract, but to put it in concrete terms, think of a king, or even just a boss or whatever. Think of somebody in authority, and they have people under their control that they're trying to control. The historical form of power is that you exercise authority by punishing a wrongdoer. So the king kind of sits on his throne, and when somebody breaks a law, that person is brought before the king to be punished. But Foucault, I think, says that this might strike us as control. We might look at that and think, oh, the king has control in the situation because he's able to punish the wrongdoer. But in reality, Foucault, I think, would say that this is not real control. That real control would come from the king determining the conditions and the situation and having such a grasp on the population that nobody ever breaks the law. And this is sort of where biopolitics comes into play. Because what biopolitics does is it is the technique of creating a situation where essentially laws are sort of internalized by the population, and without the need to punish directly, people keep themselves in line. I just wanted to interject real quick on myself to give maybe a more clear example that you might be familiar with. And it's the difference between 1984 and Brave New World. So I think this is a really good way to distinguish between the sovereign power and biopower. I just wanted to read real quick this quote that I think sums it up real quick, the difference between the two, by Neil Postman, who wrote in the foreword of his 1985 book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. He says, "What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was that there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one who wanted to read one. Orwell feared those who would deprive us of information. Huxley feared those who would give us so much that we would be reduced to passivity and egoism. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. Orwell feared that we would become a captive culture. Huxley feared that we would become a trivial culture, preoccupied with some equivalent of the feelies, the orgy-porgy, and the centrifugal bumble puppy. I don't know what the fuck that means, but Huxley remarked in Brave New World Revisited, the civil libertarians and rationalists who are ever on alert to oppose tyranny, quote, failed to take into account man's almost infinite desire or appetite for distractions. In 1984, Orwell added, people are controlled by inflicting pain. In Brave New World, they are controlled by inflicting pleasure. In short, Orwell feared that our fear would ruin us. Huxley feared that our desire would ruin us." Now, did Orwell or Huxley really fear these things? I don't know, because they seem like insiders themselves that seem to be proposing a plan. And in reality, I don't think there's really, in practice, a great dichotomy between these two methods of control. I think that the old sort of 1984 sovereign punishment method is basically the basis, and biopower or biopolitics has been layered on top of it. So they work together. And so this idea of the Brave New World by Huxley, I think, is a perfect example of biopower in fiction. And I think that this type of control is what has been scientifically developed over the last couple hundred years as sort of an extra layer on top of the strict sovereign power punishment control, and that it's the combination of the two and the slowly like layering on of the biopower, which is the most dangerous. Because, like this guy's saying, it puts us in a situation where, for instance, there's no reason to ban a book because nobody wants to read it. And that's when real, lasting, possibly permanent changes occur within a population, which allows them to be controlled. And that, I think, is the sort of technique that the oligarchs, the elite today, are applying most, with the most amount of resources, the most amount of effort. So yeah. For various reasons. We could think of those reasons. I mean, I think we could see this in the corporate atmosphere today and the academic atmosphere today. And I'm most familiar with the academic atmosphere, so I see this in that I've never been punished for my views in academia. I have views that are directly opposed to the academic institution, but I've never been punished for those views. And the reason I've never been punished is that I don't have to be punished to already have a sense that institutionally there is this biopolitics going on, where if I were to ever fully reveal or express my opposition to sort of the fundamentals of what's taken for granted in the academic system, I would not have much of a chance getting good grades in my classes, or getting ahead to actually graduate, or getting into a graduate program. So instead of punishing, what biopolitics does is it sets up a situation wherein acting against the norm, acting against what the authority is trying to normalize, is so detrimental to the individual that they don't even attempt to go against the norm. So authority, I think, that has a much stronger grasp, a much stronger grip on their population if, instead of simply punishing wrongdoers here and there when they pop up, to institute this system where it becomes so advantageous to follow the norm and so disadvantageous to go against the norm that people internalize this for themselves. And I think that, this is the situation we find ourselves in America, in the West, where people aren't, there is still the sovereign power behind the biopower, where, especially in certain countries in Europe, you can be punished for your views, you can be punished for certain opinions. But in general, they don't even have to punish people because it's so advantageous for them to go along with the program. It's so much easier, and there's so many more benefits that directly are offered for these kinds of people, that they just go along with the program without punishment, without being threatened directly. And this, I think, is a very pernicious and sort of invisible form of control that goes far above and beyond simply punishing those who go against your commands or your authority. And this is sort of the world we're living in today. Yeah, like I said, my thoughts aren't entirely clear on this yet. I hope you guys can help me clarify them, give me some examples of this sort of thing. But yeah, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for watching.